and sit down.
Hey, how are my people today?
Hey, I'm Chris.
And I'm Corey.
And this is Film Narc.
We would be honored if you would join us. And here we go.
All right, Film Narc episode 2, you guys. We're talking about Star Wars, the new Star Wars trailer that just came out. We're talking about remakes and what we think about them and whether they should be made. We got a new segment called Highbrow, talking about method actors, zombies versus vampires, and more. We got all kinds of great ideas to cover today, but before we do that, we're going to be talking about the Star Wars trailer. And that's, you may be wondering about Corey. That's why he's still really psyched about the new Star Wars trailer. He hasn't quite gotten over, the shockingness of its greatness. And so hopefully we can get him to wake up, and then we can talk about it.
You got Ray.
Okay. So it starts with the girl scavenging, right?
Ray and BB-8.
He likes the new droid, I think.
And then
TIE fighters.
Yeah.
And the X-wings.
And then
the
Solo. Han Solo. He's all like, it's true.
Yeah, he's excited about how it's going to cover the history, and we're going to be back at a place where they've kind of forgotten the lore of the Force.
Oh, you got Kylo Ren, and it's just
He's really excited about the fighting that Kylo Ren is going to be doing.
Oh, it looks not that's cool though. It's tough.
He's excited about the release of Luke and how we don't know when Luke is going to be in the movie yet.
Just the fighting the snow.
Something about fighting in the snow. I think that might be the Finn fight with Kylo Ren that he's referring to there, with the cross sword and stuff.
This is like the movie that we've been waiting for.
This movie looks like we're going to get some nice aloe vera put upon the burn that the prequels caused.
Yes.
So many of the Star Wars fans.
Oh man, it's going to be so good. It looks like there's great character development. They're not spoiling a lot, which is great because we're all excited about a movie we know nothing about.
Yeah, I think it's really fitting that we talked about this in the first episode about how trailers so often give away too much, and I think we've only seen really snippets from like the first act. We don't know the storyline at all. We don't know where the story's going to go. We just know kind of like, okay, these are the main characters for this story and a little bit of like where it might go.
Yeah.
And so they've done a really good job teasing it because they give you enough to get you excited for it. And I'm confident that it's going to be a good movie.
Yeah.
We really haven't seen that much. And that seems to be pretty common across the board. Most people are like, oh, I'm so psyched. This is going to be really good. But we really haven't seen that much. So that's impressive.
What's great about it is the tone that it's setting. It really seems like things are going to happen. And that carries weight. Like, you kind of know what you're going into with the prequels that they wound up making.
Yeah. But
it just never really found a rhythm or a tone. You just kind of didn't care throughout the entire thing. When we've only seen, at the most 2 minutes, maybe? And we care a lot. It gave a little bit of dialogue, enough for you to kind of get where the character's at in the movie. Like, where are they starting? Like, Rey feels like nobody. Finn's lost a reason to fight. Kylo Ren has this motivation that isn't extremely clear, but he's extremely dedicated to it, obsessed with the story of Darth Vader. It just...
He's got some evilness. He's definitely dark.
Yeah.
And then there's characters that look like they're going to be big that we really haven't seen a lot of.
Yeah.
And then that's the biggest thing. I like that you brought that up, like, that you care. I think that might have been one of the biggest problems with the prequels. It was like, you really didn't care about the characters, and which is crazy because these characters are kind of, a big deal. So, this just looks like it's going to be better. Looks like it's going to be a little bit more cohesive. Looks like a movie that we can all get behind.
One great thing that's out there right now, it's on Instagram, but you can also catch a full version of John Boyega's on YouTube. But it's the stars, the girl who plays Ray and John Boyega who plays Finn. I forget the girl's name right now. Sorry. But their reactions to the trailer, because it's the first time them actually seeing it.
Oh, cool.
And so you get to see them react. And the girl's like in her bed and it starts and she sees herself and she like pulls the cover up to her face. And then at the end of it, she's crying and she's like, it's so amazing. Like, it looks so great. And then John Boyega, he's watching it and he's like, yeah, he's watching it with someone. He's like, And he's like, yep. And then it shows him at the end with the lightsaber and Kylo Ren going to attack. And he goes, whoa! And like jumps back and he like jumps over his couch and stuff. And he's like, ah! He's like high-fiving people and like posing like, yeah. Like, people care to be in this movie. Like, they are so excited and so invested into it. You know you're going to get their best stuff.
Right. And it should be, because this is going to be the biggest movie in a really long time.
Yeah, it's really quite incredible. So, judging... But
I think those Mormons are going to knock on the door.
If they do, that'll be awesome. They usually ask for, like, favors and stuff, right? We could ask them to help us co-host the show.
They're going to want you to convert to Mormonism.
Okay, if that happens during our show, I'm
surprised
going
they
to keep it recording,
yet.
and I'm going to talk to them, invite them onto the show if they want to be on it. Okay, so we'll see what happens.
They're not going to knock. I feel like they should have knocked by now.
I know. I guess they're just not dedicated.
That was weird. It looked like they were walking down the driveway.
Yeah.
Like into... Okay.
Mm-hmm. Hello. How's it going? Oh, going good.
Well, that's good to hear. We're the missionaries, so we're just sharing a message about Jesus Christ.
Ah. Okay. Well, I appreciate you guys coming. I'm actually recording a show here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with a friend of mine.
Okay.
If you guys want to be a part of it, you can.
Sure, that's cool. What is it?
We're talking about movies.
Oh,
So-
okay.
Yeah.
Cool, I like your jacket on here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we were just talking about the Star Wars trailer.
Oh, really? We actually haven't seen it because we're missionaries.
Oh, that makes sense.
Oh, you've seen it?
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, did you guys want to talk about it for a couple minutes?
I haven't seen it, but we can say hello.
Okay. Yeah, you can say hello just for a minute. We got it going. Here. Say hi.
How's it going?
How long have you guys been missionaries with the Church of Latter-day Saints?
It's about a year.
A year? Do you guys watch movies? You guys like movies?
I love movies, but we don't watch movies as missionaries, so.
Yeah.
So you just, when you go into missionary mode, that's like full time, you don't watch movies anymore?
24/7.
And that's 2 years?
Yep.
Huh.
That's awesome. That's great dedication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Something that I know to be true, and I find great joy in it, and just want to share it with others.
Oh, right on.
Mhm.
Right on, guys. Yeah, well, sorry to make it kind of awkward.
We're going.
All right. For the audio listeners, I'm just going to repeat it so people watching the video will be totally fine. We just got visited by some Mormon Church of Latter-day Saint people who knocked on the door during the show, and I invited them on. We chatted with them. It was really awkward. So if you want to hear
Apparently
that...
they don't watch any movies when they're missionaries. That's
Yeah, I didn't
interesting.
know that.
Didn't know that either.
That's
so now
crazy.
we know.
Now we know. Don't bring in...
We don't know. No other Mormons will be
Don't
watching
bring in
this.
missionaries to talk movies.
Yeah, they don't know.
They don't know. But hey, it's cool. They do what they do.
I wonder. They're probably pretty young. I think they start their like missionary 2 years like at a pretty young age.
Probably.
We should probably talk about movies.
Yeah. Let's move on to something else. Let's just kind of remake the show, which will be a transition over into talking about remakes. Remakes is something that I personally am very passionate about. That was so weird. I'm sorry, now I just have these random people in my house. They're not still here. But remakes are something I'm very passionate about because I feel like there's a very fine line in terms of remakes on what's acceptable and what isn't.
Well,
How do you feel?
I don't know. I mean, it's difficult. A lot of times, people are trying to remake these movies that have a huge following that people are passionate about and really like.
Mm-hmm.
And when you remake that, you run the risk of, ruining it. And I think it is a legitimate risk. I think there
Mm.
are stakes because you hear about these people. I know people that have only seen the prequels and haven't seen the original trilogy of Star Wars, or I know people who have only seen the remake of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and they haven't seen the original Willy Wonka. And like when you do something like that, now this new generation has no idea how good those movies actually are. Because I was just talking to some kids and I was like, "Hey, have you guys seen Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, that's amazing. I didn't think you would have." I'm pretty sure most of them were talking about the new one.
Yeah.
Which just totally just breaks my heart because the new one's not nearly as good as the original.
No.
So there are stakes to making a remake and making a bad one.
Yes.
So it's not like, oh, we'll just remake this movie and if it sucks, it doesn't matter. I think it does matter.
Yeah.
So you don't want to remake. You run the risk of ruining a good movie.
Yes. Very much
That's
so.
one of the risks. That I think there are others. I mean, first you could waste your time, remaking a movie that doesn't need to be remade or isn't, no one's going to go to see,
For me, I feel like it's remaking something. It's got to be like a water cooler movie. What I mean by that is like, you know how you always gossip around water coolers,
Right.
although they're not really around
like
anymore.
people talk about.
But yeah, people talk about it and they're like, "Oh man, one of my favorite movies was a long time ago." Like, "Oh, Never Ending Story." I'm just picking that out of the air. I don't think they're remaking that.
Hopefully they won't ever try.
But that's a movie that if it came out and it said we're remaking the Never Ending Story, I would be upset, but I wouldn't be surprised. Kind of like with Clash of the Titans. I'm a huge Ray Harryhausen fan. I love his work, which is why I really love the original Clash of the Titans. And when they came out with a remake, I was like, no, you can't do that. You're ruining all the charm of the movie.
Right.
But I started to think about it and I was like, well, I understand. Like with technology nowadays, you think of the effects and the creatures that they can make. Neverending Story would kind of be along the same lines. Think of all the special effects you'd be able to do to really make it as crazy as possible. I understand that.
But that's the problem with these remakes is a lot of what made those originals so great
It's
is
the
the
charm.
practical effects and the not really believable, but it still kind of brings you into the story,
Yeah.
kind of prosthetics and things that they
Tangible.
puppets. Yeah, things that you could use where it's clear that that is a physical thing on the screen, and I think that just makes the movie more enjoyable and really helps transport you into a world. Because even if it's not believable that this creature exists, it's believable that people spent time making that
Yeah.
look like it does, and there's been a lot of work that's gone into it. And I think that's part of why Lord of the Rings did so well, is because they really had a good combination of practical effects with like new movie magic, and,
Yeah.
and everything came together really well.
CG should be used to enhance, not replace.
Right. And it looks like they're doing a good job with that in the new Star Wars,
Yes.
which is another reason why that trailer looks so good. But
So good.
that's why you have to be careful with these remakes, because sometimes you go to remake a movie and that movie only did well because of the nature of, like they remade Evil Dead. And Evil Dead was one of those old kind of slasher, like horror cabin in the woods, but it was all practical effects and fake blood squirting out of walls, and that was what made that movie so much fun. And so the remake was like totally unnecessary. You're not gonna make a better movie than that one. Like that one's, especially when you have movies that are popular because they are weird or not really good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of movies like that, and why would you ever try and remake a movie like that? Because you're never going to hit that sweet spot. You can't do it on purpose.
I think there is a perfect old-fashioned word that describes, because you don't want to say it's a bad movie, because it's not a bad movie, because it's completely enjoyable and
Right.
you love it. But it's not like a good or great movie. I think those movies are best described by the word rad.
Rad?
Yeah, because rad is one of those old words no one uses. It's kind of outdated. Like
That
the
makes me
movies
think of like
themselves.
skateboarding or surfing, though.
Yeah, but I feel like
Like I would call Point Break a rad movie.
yeah, like that's a rad movie. But I would also put like the Evil Dead movies and stuff into there.
Okay.
Um,
Well, we were talking about B&Bs, which is like beer and buds.
Yeah,
you call your
or
bros.
beer and bros.
Yeah, and you watch a B movie. That's why I like it so much, because it's a B movie, so it's best for beer and bros, and just
Yeah.
you watch it in the same way that you might watch a game of football,
Yeah.
with your snacks, and you talk through it. You don't just sit there quietly. And you laugh
And you enjoy it.
Like what did we watch recently? Well, it wasn't that recent, but the Insane Clowns from Outer Space.
Oh yeah, Killer Clowns from Outer Space,
Killer
or
Clowns
No
from Outer
Holds
Space.
Barred with Hulk Hogan. That's a
was
great movie to watch with a friend and have some beers.
You can't watch that. Some of those are so bad you couldn't watch them any other way.
Yeah.
Evil Dead movies like that, I think they're good enough that you could still enjoy them, even if you're by yourself. But you probably wouldn't. They're the kind of movies that you wouldn't watch by yourself. You watch them with friends. So they're B and Bs. They're B movies.
But now,
so you would call that rad?
I would call it rad.
Okay.
I think that's a fitting word. It's outdated, kind of like the movies and the technology that they use. But it's also meant to be like cool and funky and out there. So
Yeah.
And that's where the skater lingo. It's always like, yeah, man, that's right.
That's really far out.
Yeah. So.
So give us some specific examples of remakes that you think. What were the categories? Like unnecessary.
Unnecessary. There's good remakes and then there's bad remakes.
Right.
So in terms of good remakes, those are pretty few and far between.
I'm trying to think of one.
See, I personally, in terms of remakes, I gotta say, I love the Sam Raimi Spider-Man. I love the first two movies. The third one was awful.
Right.
But I swore off The Amazing Spider-Man just because I was such a fan of the other movies. And I really liked Amazing Spider-Man a little bit better than the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. I thought it was a little more in line with his snarkiness.
I like
the
new Spider-Man, but I don't think they're better than the originals. And that's another thing where people are like, oh, Spider-Man is Andrew Garfield, and I think
it's Tobey
I don't
Maguire.
understand. Like Tobey Maguire was a great Spider-Man, and the original Spider-Man movies, especially the first two, were good. Amazing Spider-Man is good, and it's surprising that it's still good. I think that just goes to show how good the story of Spider-Man really is. You can make multiple origin stories, and they're both are really entertaining, good movies. So I understand. I don't really fully understand why they remade them. I think they're kind of.
I don't understand that either. And
I
it was
think they
pretty
kind of stuck
soon.
with the Tobey Maguire movies and been like, 3 wasn't so good, but if they did change Spider-Man, I think that's the reason why. I think they couldn't keep Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, and so they decided to just revamp it and remake it instead of trying to say this is a continuation of the storyline we were already doing, because then you have a different Spider-Man and it doesn't really work.
Yeah, and a lot of people had bad taste in their mouth after the third one, me included.
Yeah.
But then you have really bad remakes. Like, if they called Clash of the Titans a different movie, I probably would have enjoyed it. But because it was called Clash of the Titans, I can't really like it. It had its moments, but the whole Jin involvement...
Technically, Godzilla was a remake.
Yes, and that movie was incredible.
Movie was great. They did a really good job with it. But then you have plenty of...
Loved it.
In that...
Big Godzilla fan.
In that, genre, just Godzilla, there's been good and bad remakes.
Yes.
More bad than good, but...
Yes. America's 1999 version.
Yeah, was terrible. Godzilla 2000 or something like that. Had, glowing blue spikes.
Yeah, he had a orange breath in that one, the Godzilla 2000. That was still Japan though, so you kind of could get away with a little bit of the cheesiness. But the 1999 Godzilla with Matthew Broderick was just no, don't do it.
It didn't turn out, didn't pan out really, and that's actually another example of. It's hard to do right. The newest Godzilla was good, and that was special effects instead of, remaking an old where it was probably just a guy in a model city wearing a Godzilla suit.
Yeah.
So when you take that and scale it up with CGI, that a lot of times doesn't work. They did a good job with the newest one, though.
And
they got a lot of star power in it.
And that's what you do is you have to have some sort of appreciation of the original films in a remake. You can't just go totally rogue and be like, oh, yeah, we're doing something totally different. You have to have a little bit of throwback. Otherwise, it's just crap. Honestly.
I think that's consistent, especially with superheroes now. Like
Mm.
they're always done better when the people know the original material, and then they're like fans of the comic books.
Yeah.
And like the Star Wars, J.J. Abrams is a huge fan of Star Wars, and was kind of blown away and felt like it was too big of a movie for even him to do. And you see that kind of respect and awe
Yeah.
in what he's making. And so a lot of remakes, if you have that kind of respect and appreciation by the people making the films, they turn out better. But a lot of times they're remaking movies that don't need to be remade. Like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah.
You can't, if
It's
you
unnecessary.
really pay attention to that original movie, it is amazing that it works because
Yeah.
it's really weird. There's a lot of like really fanciful, like unbelievable stuff, like right next to this really serious, like kind of darkness.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that it works and it's so friendly and kid friendly in the original. And they tried to remake that, and that's why the remake is so weird and not that good, because they tried to do that same thing. And I think of a lot of remakes, it's not really, they did a valiant effort, you know.
Yeah.
It just doesn't really work, and it's nowhere near as good as the original. And so now you have this movie out there that people think is the only Willy Wonka when it's not, and that's sad.
Do you feel like that's probably one of the most unnecessary remakes ever made?
No, I'm sure there are far more unnecessary.
Because I got
remakes.
one that I would vote as the most unnecessary remake in the world.
Oh man, the most unnecessary ever. I'm not sure what I would say. What were you thinking?
Footloose.
Okay, yeah. Footloose.
I adore the Kevin Bacon Footloose. Kevin Bacon, if you're listening to this, which I'm sure you are,
Good job.
we are one of the most popular podcasts no one's heard of.
The most popular podcast no one's heard.
Yeah.
The ones that are more popular than us, people have heard of.
Yeah. So see? But the original Footloose is so good. It's so 80s. It's fantastic. Totally believable. Amazing actors in it. John Lithgow killing it as the priest.
There's no like special effects necessary.
No!
So there's not like if you remake it, you can do better effects.
There's no water cooler.
There's
Going,
no
you know what
actors.
they should do.
There's no actors nowadays that would be better cast
Yeah.
in roles than Kevin Bacon. And I just don't. Yeah, there's no point. Why
So,
would you remake it? It's
You know,
not
in
a
the
movie that calls
advancements
for a
of
remake.
dance over the past couple decades, I'm thinking we should redo Footloose.
That is,
Town that outlaws
they're trying to
dancing.
make money off the name of Footloose.
Exactly.
You know, and like the legal rights probably switched hands, and they were like, oh no, we have to make a movie.
Karate Kid is a great example of that.
Oh, Karate Kid was another really
He learns
bad
kung
remake.
fu, not karate. They try to do like the whole, just, I'm secretly training you, but instead he's just taking off his jacket and throwing it on the ground and then putting it on and then doing this and then putting it down on the ground. No one wants to see that. No one wants to see 5 minutes of a kid putting his jacket on and off, and then you're like, I was really teaching you how to block stuff, and you're don't care.
That's really similar to the original. That's why they did that.
I know, but it's not as good because you're watching him clean and paint all these different things, and you're like,
Right. He's working. He wants to work on.
yeah. And you're like, okay, why
But
does he have him doing all
with the
this
remake,
stuff?
it's all he's doing is taking his coat off, putting it back on.
Yeah.
Taking his coat off.
Yeah,
putting it
Mr.
back on.
Miyagi in the original does like all these different things, and then at the end, he
Paint.
just starts violently like attacking
Wax
him,
on,
and then
wax
he's
off.
finding out he was actually teaching him while he was doing normal stuff. Like, he's probably like, why does he keep having me take my jacket on and off? I don't know what this has to do with anything.
Well, it was like
Oh,
it was
you were
this kind of a
training me.
movement, and
Yeah.
I don't understand
Fairly obvious.
how that would be a good movement in a karate fight. You know?
In the original Karate Kid,
Oh, you're gonna punch me? Yeah! Like you might knock some fists away.
in the original Karate Kid, it wasn't about a kid just learning to fight. It was about him like learning about himself, learning to stand up for himself,
Right.
finding something, learning discipline.
Also,
that.
there's
And people are coming around and they're like, at the end, they're like, hey, you're all right, you're great.
There's a lot of mystery surrounding Mr. Miyagi, and I think Jackie Chan was actually a pretty good cast
Yeah.
in the new one, but Jaden Smith was not.
One of the other big issues I had with the new one is that the kids were like super soldiers. They're like jumping up, climbing on rooftops and doing flips.
Yeah.
And then Jackie Chan's like throwing tennis balls at him and he's like knocking tennis balls out of there. And it's like, dude, holy crap. In 5 minutes, he became like a tool for the military.
Yeah.
Like- We don't need that. And then they're using wires for him doing like backflips and stuff. It's like it's not Sylvester Stallone or some major action star. It's a story
Right.
about really self-discovery. But anyway, it's nonsense.
Unnecessary remake.
Totally unnecessary. But we're gonna take a break here. We're gonna give you a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
Yep.